At the beginning of the century, in a time of political intrigue and constant wars, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote one of the most controversial and enduring treatises in history, The Prince. In it, Machiavelli broke away from the moral conventions of his time, challenging the idea that goodness and power are complementary forces. He argued that success in politics and life often requires cunning, pragmatism, and, in some cases, a dose of strategic cruelty. But what does this have to do with the good guys? Why do so many kind-hearted people end up being subjugated in competitive environments? Why do those who follow the rules, who are kind and trusting, often face more challenges than those who manipulate and control? The answer may lie in the lessons Machiavelli left us. Although often associated with coldness and calculation, Machiavelli was also a profound observer of human nature. He knew that even the most virtuous need to understand the rules of the game to survive and thrive. In this video we will explore 4 fundamental lessons from Machiavelli that the good guys can adopt to start the year with more strength, wisdom, and resilience. We will examine each of these lessons through classic examples from literature, philosophical arguments, and modern insights from psychology and sociology. Prepare for a journey that will challenge your perceptions of goodness, power, and the balance between ethics and pragmatism. Machiavelli is not a villain to be feared but a teacher to be understood. First lesson: understand human nature. Machiavelli believed that the first step for anyone who wishes to prosper, especially the good, is to understand the true nature of humanity. In The Prince, he emphasizes that human beings are not intrinsically good or evil but are shaped by circumstances, interests, and needs. This insight, though uncomfortable, is essential for navigating complex social and professional games. Machiavelli wrote, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, deceitful, cowardly in the face of danger, and greedy for gain." At first glance this may seem pessimistic. However, Machiavelli did not argue that everyone is this way by choice. He saw it as a consequence of social and political conditions. Understanding this dynamic is crucial to avoid disappointment and to anticipate behaviors that may harm the well-intentioned. For Machiavelli, goodness was not an absolute virtue but a tool to be used wisely. He argued that in a world where intentions are often selfish, naivety is a weakness that can cost dearly. This view does not suggest abandoning goodness but applying it strategically, shaped by circumstances. A striking quote from The Prince reinforces this idea. "A man who wishes to profess goodness in all circumstances is bound to fail among so many who are not good." This perception reveals an uncomfortable but essential truth for the good to survive. They must adjust their goodness to reality. An even more impactful example comes from Jean Valjean, the protagonist of Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. Valjean is a kind man, but his kindness is tempered by the need for survival in a hostile world. He learns that to protect those he loves and do good, he must sometimes adopt pragmatic methods. Throughout the narrative, Valjean faces situations where he must choose between idealism and Machiavellian pragmatism. His evolution as a character reflects the balance between kindness and cunning, proving that even the most virtuous must learn to adapt to the realities of the world. Modern research in neuroscience and psychology reinforces the danger of naivety. The concept of theory of mind, which is the ability to understand the intentions and thoughts of others, helps us understand how we interact with the world. Studies show that overly empathetic and trusting people tend to ignore warning signs of manipulative behavior. A study by psychologist Jennifer Freyd on the betrayal trauma model highlights that those who trust blindly often ignore small signs of disloyalty until it is too late. This validates Machiavelli's idea that it is essential to read between the lines and act cautiously. Furthermore, neuroscience shows that the brain's reward circuit, activated by altruistic behaviors, can lead us to act impulsively, ignoring risks. This does not mean we should not be generous but that we must balance kindness with critical thinking. Think of a professional who always offers to help colleagues but rarely receives the same in return. This is common, especially in competitive corporate environments. Machiavelli would advise observing behavioral patterns and limiting help to those who demonstrate reciprocity. A practical approach would be to adopt the concept of conditional generosity, where your kindness is proportional to the return you receive. This is not selfishness but a way to avoid exploitation and ensure your energy is invested in the right people. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche also offers insight into kindness. He argued that kindness, when not accompanied by strength, often becomes passive and vulnerable. In Beyond Good and Evil, he wrote, "Kindness that cannot assert itself is weakness disguised as virtue." Nietzsche complements Machiavelli's view by suggesting that being good is not enough. One must be strong to protect that goodness. Understanding human nature and balancing kindness with strategy is a significant step, but Machiavelli knew that this is not enough. Second lesson, the power of appearance. Machiavelli, in The Prince, teaches us that perception is a powerful tool, often more influential than reality itself. He states, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, for everyone can see but few can touch." This lesson reveals an essential aspect of human nature, the tendency to believe what we see, often ignoring underlying facts. For those who are good guys, those who rely solely on transparency and authenticity, this idea may seem uncomfortable. But Machiavelli does not advocate for falsehood. He suggests that understanding the power of appearance is vital for surviving and thriving in a world where people often judge without examining deeply. Studies in social psychology corroborate this view. First impressions, based on factors like posture, tone of voice, clothing, and even facial expressions, are formed in fractions of a second. According to a study published in Psychological Science, people form judgments of competence in just 100 milliseconds when looking at an unfamiliar face. These quick impressions can influence important decisions such as hiring someone, choosing a leader, or even trusting a person. The impact of appearance is also present in power dynamics. A classic experiment conducted by Amy Cuddy, a professor at Harvard Business School, showed that people who adopt expansive body postures are perceived as more confident and capable. These individuals not only convey authority but also experience hormonal changes that reinforce their sense of power, making them more assertive. For the good guys, this means that the way you present yourself can determine whether you are taken seriously or ignored. It is not about abandoning ethical values but recognizing that perception is a social reality that cannot be ignored. In Hamlet by William Shakespeare, Claudius constructs a facade of a just and responsible king, even though he is responsible for his brother's murder. He understands that to maintain his position, he must appear virtuous in the eyes of his subjects, even if his actions say otherwise. This manipulation of perception keeps him in power for a considerable time, despite the dark truth behind his rise. On the other hand, Hamlet, the protagonist, is underestimated by many because his hesitation and erratic behavior project an image of weakness. His true intelligence and depth are only perceived by a few, and this puts him at a disadvantage in a political game where appearance is worth more than substance. Machiavelli was not the only one to observe the power of appearance. Friedrich Nietzsche, in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, wrote, "What has value in itself does not need applause, but the world believes more in brilliance than in essence." Nietzsche, like Machiavelli, understood that people have difficulty seeing beyond the superficial. This philosophical view reinforces the idea that appearance should not be dismissed as trivial but recognized as an integral part of human interactions. For the good guys, this means that even if their intentions are pure, they must learn to project strength and confidence. It is not about falseness but aligning external perception with internal value, ensuring that their virtues are not ignored or underestimated. In everyday life, the power of appearance manifests in various ways. Think of job interviews, negotiations, or even social encounters. A person who arrives at a meeting well-dressed, with a firm posture and assertive tone of voice, immediately conveys competence and respect, even before saying a word. A practical example is the phenomenon known as the halo effect. This term, coined by psychologist Edward Thorndike, describes how the positive perception of one characteristic, such as appearance or charisma, can lead people to assume that the individual possesses other positive qualities. For example, a confident leader is often considered more competent and trustworthy, even without concrete evidence of their abilities. For the good guys, understanding the halo effect can be transformative. This means that taking care of how you present yourself, both physically and in terms of body language, can open doors that once seemed closed. When we recognize that appearance is just one piece of the puzzle, although a crucial one, we understand how to project confidence and strength. However, this alone is not enough. Third lesson: the art of adaptation. In The Prince, Machiavelli dedicates significant attention to the need to adapt to circumstances. He writes, "He who adapts his conduct to the nature of the times will be successful, and likewise, he who does not will be destroyed." This lesson reveals one of the most brutal and essential truths of life. The world is constantly changing, and those who insist on remaining rigid and inflexible are inevitably left behind. For the good guys, this teaching may seem uncomfortable, as it challenges the idea that fixed values are sufficient to ensure success and harmony. However, the ability to adapt does not imply abandoning morality but understanding the context and adjusting strategies to achieve goals without compromising what is essential. A classic example from literature that illustrates the power of adaptation is Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. The protagonist, Jean Valjean, begins as a man hardened by injustice but, throughout the narrative, adapts to circumstances, transforming into a symbol of compassion and redemption. He recognizes that to survive and do good, he must adjust his actions to the reality of the cruel world he lives in. Another example comes from Homer's Odyssey, where Odysseus demonstrates an extraordinary ability to adapt to the most adverse situations, whether facing Cyclopes, resisting sirens, or navigating unknown seas. Odysseus uses his intelligence and flexibility to survive. He does not rely solely on his physical strength but on the adaptability of his strategies according to the challenge. These characters exemplify that adaptability is not just a survival skill but a virtue that can lead to transformation and success. Philosophy also reinforces the value of adaptation. Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher, wrote, "Nothing is permanent except change." This teaching echoes Machiavelli's lesson, as it emphasizes that resisting change is futile and counterproductive. Heraclitus believed that wisdom lies in understanding the constant flow of life and learning to navigate it rather than fighting against it. Another philosopher who addressed the importance of adaptation was Confucius, who stated, "The wise man adjusts his conduct to the demands of the moment." For Confucius, flexibility was not a sign of weakness but of practical wisdom. He saw adaptation as a form of harmony with the world, allowing the individual to prosper without losing their essence. In everyday life, the art of adaptation can be observed in countless situations. Think of professionals who had to reinvent themselves during the COVID-19 pandemic, shifting to remote work or learning new skills to remain relevant. This ability to adjust quickly to market changes was essential for many who managed to thrive in difficult times. Another example is in social life. People who demonstrate empathy and flexibility in their interactions tend to build stronger relationships. They know how to listen, adjust their words and actions to the needs of others, and create genuine connections. For the good guys, adaptation can be the key to balancing kindness with effectiveness. This means learning to be firm when necessary, adjusting to the context without sacrificing principles, and finding creative ways to align goals. As we delve deeper into Machiavelli's lessons, it becomes clear that adaptation is an indispensable skill for navigating life's complexities. However, it does not exist in isolation. To be truly effective, adaptation must be combined with a clear understanding of power and perception. Fourth lesson: the power to inspire respect over love. Machiavelli, in The Prince, argues that it is safer to inspire respect, even if mixed with a touch of fear, than to depend on the love of people. For him, love is fickle, subject to changes in mood and interest, while respect, once earned, is harder to shake. Machiavelli states, "Men hesitate less to harm someone who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared." This is not a call to cruelty but a warning about the fragility of love as a basis for power. Respect, on the other hand, creates a psychological barrier that inhibits disloyal actions or betrayals. In daily life, this can be observed in leaders who, instead of trying to please everyone, establish clear boundaries, act with firmness, and demonstrate competence. They may not be the most loved, but they are recognized for their ability to make difficult and fair decisions. The Machiavellian concept of respect resonates with the philosophy of Kant, who saw respect as a moral basis for human interactions. Kant argued that respect for oneself and others is fundamental for social balance. However, Machiavelli goes further. For him, respect must be a tool of power, something earned through concrete actions and effective strategies. From a neuroscientific perspective, respect is directly related to the activation of neural circuits associated with trust and security. A study published in Nature Human Behavior suggests that people who inspire respect can reduce the activation of the amygdala, a brain region associated with fear in conflict situations. This means that inspiring respect not only improves how others perceive you but also creates a more stable and predictable psychological environment. On the other hand, the relentless pursuit of love activates areas of the brain linked to reward, such as the ventral striatum. When love is not reciprocated or recognized, these areas can enter a state of deprivation, leading to impulsive and harmful behaviors. In practice, the difference between love and respect can be seen in contexts like the workplace. A boss who tries to be friends with everyone may struggle to impose authority or make difficult decisions. A respected boss, even if not the most loved, is capable of leading efficiently because their posture inspires confidence and professionalism. In personal relationships, respect creates a solid foundation for mutual trust. It allows people to express their opinions and boundaries without fear of being devalued or ignored. This lesson from Machiavelli challenges the notion that being loved is the ultimate ideal. It invites us to reflect on the importance of inspiring respect, which not only strengthens our relationships but also protects us from emotional fragility and the pitfalls of depending exclusively on the affection of others. In the end, the choice is not between respect and love but how to balance both, prioritizing what offers stability and longevity to our interactions and personal power. Conclusion. The 4 lessons from Machiavelli challenge us to rethink kindness, leadership, and human nature from a raw but profoundly practical perspective. They do not deny the importance of ethical values or empathy but invite us to balance them with a strategic approach to life. The first lesson reminds us that in a competitive world, perception often surpasses truth. Recognizing the need to shape how we are seen is not manipulation, it is survival. This does not mean abandoning authenticity but learning to communicate our intentions in a way that inspires confidence and authority. The second lesson highlights the importance of discerning between what is desirable and what is truly necessary. Prudence is the key to effective leadership, whether in personal or professional life. Learning to choose the right battles, accepting that not everything is under our control, and acting with calculation are the pillars of a more stable and meaningful life. The third lesson breaks with the romantic ideal that pleasing everyone is a virtue. Machiavelli shows us that respect, even if sometimes mixed with a touch of fear, builds more solid and less volatile relationships than superficial love. Inspiring respect does not mean being cruel but establishing boundaries and demonstrating competence with firmness. The fourth lesson challenges excessive kindness that often turns into vulnerability. Being good does not mean being naive. It is necessary to align kindness with strategic intelligence to avoid being exploited or underestimated. It is the combination of compassion and strength that truly defines an individual prepared to face life's challenges. Machiavelli was not an advocate of evil or manipulation as many believe. He was an astute observer of human nature and power dynamics, offering lessons that, although controversial, are incredibly useful. Applying these lessons to daily life does not mean abandoning kindness or moral values but using them consciously and strategically to navigate the world better. As Machiavelli himself said, "Men forget more quickly the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." This phrase, as harsh as it may seem, reminds us of the importance of understanding human motivations and acting with intelligence. By balancing kindness, strategy, and courage, we can not only survive but thrive in a world where naivety is often a weakness. In the end, Machiavelli's legacy is not about how to be cruel but about how to be wise. And this wisdom, when applied correctly, can transform our lives and help us start the year with purpose and resilience.